All right, all right, all right. So I'm not saying that the California wildfires were deliberate, but it is a weird coincidence that now we're going to rebuild all of like the LA area over the next 3 years just in time for the 2028 Olympics. Just saying. I'm not saying it's coincidence. It probably is coincidence, but it's one of those things where like it just seems like too convenient of a coincidence in my in my opinion. It just seems weird. It just seems weird that something like that would line up. Like, how often do the planets align? Probably about as often as they align to have a hurricane in the Appalachian Mountains, right? So, yeah, strange times we live in, indeed. So yeah, I mean, everything from that going on to this whole, you know, TikTok ban issue, which I mean, I'm guessing TikTok is going to go away. Welcome to everybody who found me. All of you guys. It's hard to keep up. But anyway, welcome to everybody. So we'll see what happens with the TikTok ban issue. I know that I'm on. You can find me on other platforms. I am on former Bird site. I'm still there. I'm a lot more aggressive on that website, or that platform. So those of you who are used to like my sanitized version you see on TikTok, it's not sanitized over there. So there you go. It's like I could, and because there is a bit more freedom. It's been weird, like platform-wise, from a content creator standpoint. Even though I don't consider myself a content creator, I'm just some random guy on the internet. But they consider me to be a content creator, right? The people who run the platforms consider me to be a content creator. And you have to go to like each different platform, right? And you can post certain stuff on certain platforms and other stuff you can't post on other platforms, right? You play this little game, and which is why in some cases, if you snoop around a little bit, you'll see some videos that I've done on one platform, but you'll see other videos that I've done on you know what I'm saying? It's like some of them you just won't see, because like if I post it over there, then it'll be my account will get nuked or something like that. So anyway, welcome to everybody. As far as the tick, where I was going with that was the TikTok ban aspect, and we'll see what happens with it. But it's not, in my opinion, I don't know that it looks good for TikTok. I think that the content that you can find here is unique, and let me explain what I mean by that. Because TikTok is primarily a video platform, right? It's very difficult to put out a bunch of fake propaganda, because you would have to find a bunch of content creators to put out a bunch of fake propaganda. Make sense? Okay. With print or text type media, you could have 1 million bots pushing all kinds of crazy narratives 24/7 nonstop, and there's no way of knowing whether or not that's like an actual person is in other words, you have no way of knowing if that's their actual thoughts, if that's an actual person that is thinking those thoughts and then putting that out there and saying, hey, this is my opinion, here's what's up. Okay, it's a lot harder to do that, especially from most of the accounts that are anonymous. Well, okay, so on TikTok, because it's primarily video platform, it's this right here. It is very difficult to. It's you would have to create like AI and some kind of imagine trying to do like a CGI that looked this good. I assure you, I'm an actual person. I'm here in South Texas, and it's freaking cold today. I understand relatively. Don't start, people from my north people, don't start chiming in with that stuff. I'm actually from the north, so I'm used to the negative 20-degree weather. But down here, in the relative sense, it's actually, I think it's like 45 degrees, which is actually cold for South Texas. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's much harder to, and of course it carries a bit more impact because, and I talked about this a long time ago. I think there was a live stream. I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 live streams ago where I talked about that this type of communication that's happening here is very different than the kind of communication that you do with your thumbs. It's just very different. It has a different feel to it entirely, and you're able to actually communicate because there's the type of communication that you can do in a video, right? With the exception of you standing here in front of me in my garage, is more accurate because you get to see body language. You get to hear tone of voice. All that stuff you don't get in text or in written form, whether it's, a Fed book or former bird site. It's, so you kind of see what I'm saying? So I think that that's probably the biggest reason why, and I think that the TikTok, the content creator lawyer who argued for the content creators on TikTok, because it's not just TikTok, but it's the content creators as well that are also saying, hey, just a second here, you're actually trying to censor content. And yeah, it is. I mean, like I just saw, there was just some other content creator. There was just somebody else on TikTok. I just happened to see before this, just before I logged on here, I just happened to look down and see this young lady, and she's talking about that, that like, oh, well, they're worried about TikTok is making people lose faith in their government. No, TikTok's not doing that. What people are doing is they're losing faith in their government because they see how incompetent it actually is. And if you followed my work for any length of time, you already know what I'm going to say next. Government is your collective greed and incompetence, right? So you might as well say that people are kind of losing faith in themselves. Well, yeah, they kind of are after a fashion. So yeah, they're losing faith in the system. Well, of course they are, because the system isn't working anymore, not working for them any longer, right? Remember, most people want a system. They want a system that's going to work for them. Anything that I don't like should be banned, and anything that I do like should be a human right and subsidized by taxpayers. It's just complete mental illness, and it's on all sides. It's not exclusive to the left or the right. It's just how it is. Supreme Court censoring people now. Yeah, it is. That's we'll see what happens with that. I'm very curious to see, and let me scroll back. Doggone it, TikTok. Supreme Court is just censoring people now. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I mean, we're going to see how this plays out with them. I mean, they may come back and say, no, hey, look, you don't really have any constitutional authority to do this. You may be able to make some thin case about China, but content creators, no. And not only that, like I said, in terms of the legal framework and the legal argument that the content creator lawyer made and the lawyer for TikTok made, those actually have piles and piles and piles of precedent and legal standing. The government's argument is, we don't like TikTok, and it's and of course the politicians, it's corrupting our kids' minds, as if any of these people care about your kids. Come on. Now these people, come on, dude, please. If they cared about your kid, let me be very clear for anybody out there watching this who may have just tuned in. Let me just be clear this whole, oh my God, the kids, it's ruining kids' minds. Let me just clear this up. If they really cared about kids and the well-being of kids, if any of the House or the Senate cared about kids, they would not be saddling them with debt. Piles and piles and piles of debt. Endless amounts of debt that can never be paid back. Right? Like, I mean, you would not, if you're claiming that you cared about children, you would not be saying, hey, look, kids, congratulations, here's your birth certificate and $144,000 worth of debt the day you're born. Yeah, they wouldn't be doing that. So no, none of these people care about, kids. That's just nonsense. That's all hype. I'm glad I caught you. I've been trying to catch your live streams. Yeah, I'm here. I do try to keep it consistent. I try to do it at the same time every Saturday at 6 Central Time. I do try to actually keep it somewhat consistent. Yeah, we'll see if I'm back next Saturday. It depends on how busy I am, but I generally try to keep the same type of the rhythm, because then it makes it easier for people to kind of plan around it if they want to and stuff. Like the old days, right? Like when you wanted to run home and catch the A-Team before it went off the air, that's what you had to do. You had to know what time it came on. Trump can choose to ignore the ruling. Yeah, he could. Unfortunately, I don't trust Trump. I just don't. You guys, anybody out there can be mad at me all you want, but I don't trust Trump any further than I can throw him. I've seen too much of what he has and has not done. He's like a lot of people. He talks a really good game, but then it just kind of fades. So, but But yeah, he could choose to ignore it. But remember, keep in mind, Trump is the law and order. Law and order. He's that guy, and there's 80 million plus laws, and we'll see what happens. Let's continue on here. Scroll, scroll, scroll. See who else. There's like just a pile of everybody here. Doggone it. I'm trying not to miss anybody, so like I said, it's just me doing this. Let's see here. Maybe it was TikTok that turned Biden's mind into money. I doubt it. I mean, there's too much good stuff on TikTok, though. That's the thing. Like, this is the people that can complain all they want about TikTok, but there's too much good stuff on TikTok. I like welding tips, carpentry, all that kind of, like, there's so many other good things on here. So, and I wasn't trying to make this particular live stream about TikTok, but it is topical, given that we're coming down to kind of the 11th hour. So that's the only reason that I brought this up. 11 a.m. Sunday morning in Australia. Well, good morning to you. I bet it's warm there. I used to raise roos, common wallaroos. If I ever raised kangaroos again, I would go back to reds. I would do red roos. I wouldn't do wallaroos. Too high strung. The red roos tend to be a little bit more mellow. Let's see here. Come on. Sorry to everybody out there. Let's see here. Let's scroll down here. See if I can find this. Let's see here. Always good to be skeptical. Mistrust is an effective tool. Yeah, and it is. That's just how everybody should be. Everybody should be a little distrusting, particularly of government and politics, because politics is just the art of saying one thing and then doing another, right? That's how politics is played out. This is where we see this infamous image that's been circulating the internet recently over the last few days, where Trump is kind of hanging out and laughing with Obama, and it's like, really? I mean, so this is all just the WWE? Yeah, that's kind of how it works. So that's been my opinion for quite some time now. This thing is so sensitive. Biden just imposed more sanctions on Russia. Yeah, we should be pushing up oil price. Maybe. We'll see. There's also the contending demand issue, in that demand overall has been kind of dipping, just because there just isn't as much demand right now. It's the same problem that we've had. 93 or 94 countries now are in demographic decline. In other words, deaths over births, right? So there's more people leaving the game than there are people joining the game, right? And when that happens, it's sort of like a casino at like 4:30 in the morning, right? Where there's just kind of more people leaving and stumbling up to their rooms for the night than there are people coming in to join the game. So they start shutting down tables and condensing everything to the one side of the casino so that the other side can be cleaned. It's kind of where everything is going. Now, this is the good thing now. So, like, I was going to talk about this one time, because somebody had actually asked me, they said hey, can you talk about the birth rate issue? And I said, well, I've talked about the birth rate issue a lot on my channel. I mean, you can go back through any one of the videos I've done, the hundreds of videos, and I do bring up birth rates quite a bit, and have for many, many years now. But I pointed out, or he was asking me to bring this up and talk about it, like, is it necessarily a bad thing? Now, that's an interesting question. I don't personally think it is. Now, am I a depopulationist? No, I'm not. I think people should just do kind of what they want. And there is plenty of space on planet Earth. You have but to leave the major cities to see that. And I would say this to just about anybody, right? Particularly Americans and Canadians in particular are very richly blessed in that regard, in that if you just get out of a major city by about 2 hours, you pretty much end up in the middle of nowhere. There's like nothing out there. It really is kind of that way. And it's like that in some other countries too. Russia comes to mind as well. Russia is such a massive country that, now some of it's uninhabitable, but you get the idea. So to answer the question, it's like, well, is it a good thing that population is reducing? Well, I think what you have is a sort of a breathing room kind of thing, right? So think of the way that everything goes in cycles. Okay, the earth goes in cycles, people go in cycles. This is just the way of things. Your body goes in cycles, right? Right? Okay, so think about it like this. So think about birth rate, like a huge spike in births, like the post-war baby boom, in particular in the U.S., is now we have to, now we have to return to normal. We have to regress to the mean. Okay, it's not a collapse. It's not population collapse. That's what the politicians and the corporate oligarchs call it. Like, oh my God, it's collapsing. No, it's not collapsing. It's just that, dude, you have gotten yourself used to living on that income and living on that type of volume of dollars that are floating around the economy with that many people. You got used to that. And now that's regressing to the mean. And if you borrowed a whole bunch think of it like this, if and props to credit where credit's due. Peter Schiff. I disagree with Peter on a lot of stuff, for the record. But he got this analogy right, and it's a brilliant analogy. Imagine you owned like a diner, right? Like a restaurant. And it's kind of, and you're just kind of getting used to your restaurant, and things are just kind of going along, right? And then the circus comes to town. And so a lot of people start showing up, and then people from other towns and people from everywhere start pouring into your town over and over and over. And you've got, all of a sudden, you have this huge volume spike in your restaurant. And any seasoned veteran business owner, I don't mean veteran as a military veteran, I mean just guys who've been doing it for a long time, they just go, oh, we're really busy and there's a big event going on, so maybe we take on some temp labor or something like that and just kind of get through it as quickly as we can and just pocket the difference. Maybe I give everybody extra bonuses because they worked extra hard, right? This is my thing too. I love bonuses. And so I give out these bonuses, right? And say, guys, we're going to pull together. It's going to be like 2 months of hell, and it's really going to be, but we're all going to make some money. And, at the end of this, I'm going to give each one of you a bonus, something like that, right? Okay, now that's what a seasoned veteran business owner does. What a rookie does is, oh my God, I'm really busy. I should go to the bank immediately and borrow $1 million to expand my restaurant, right? Because it's going to be like that forever. No, that's not how it is. So what happens is he runs to the bank, he borrows $1 million, expands his restaurant, and then by the time it's all done and the expansion's ready to go, and he's like, rock on, it's 2 weeks away from the circus leaving town, and then now the volume goes back to normal. It doesn't collapse. You don't say, oh my God, the bottom fell out of the restaurant business. No, that's not what happened. It went back to the mean. It went back to what it was before. Right? It felt really busy, and now it's going back to exactly what it was before. Okay, so you're with me so far? So imagine that on a macro level, right? Where you have all these giant monolithic mega corporations that have been borrowing and refinancing, desperately trying to keep their empires growing. Right? And you can do that when your economy is expanding. What does an expansionist economy mean? How many of you, let's test and see how many of you followed me for a long time. In order to expand an economy, you need one thing only. It's not more efficiency. Efficiency helps you to manage that, but efficiency doesn't expand your economy. The only way you expand your economy is one way. You have a bunch of kids. That's it. You have a bunch of people, right? Or you import a bunch of people, and then hope that they take to your whole Ponzi scheme like a duck to water, right? And that's a big hope, and it's a gamble, and it doesn't usually work. But yeah, so if you're used to a particular type of economy, and then it regresses to the mean, and then you've taken out all this money, you borrowed this money at the peak of all of this. In other words, you got in on the borrowing on the ass end of the pyramid. Okay? Well, now you're kind of hosed, aren't you? Right? From a business standpoint, you are kind of hosed, because now it's like, oh my God, hold on, the bottom's falling out of this. Oh my God, it's collapsing, financial collapse, bail us out. No, that's not what's happening. It's a correction in the market. What is the market? It's just people, same as an economy. Anytime you hear people say market or economy, like just substitute the word people, and that's pretty much it, okay? Not 100%, but I mean, like, that's pretty much what they're saying. So, yeah, so it regresses to the mean. Well, you have on a macro level right now, tens of thousands of giant and mid-cap corporations, companies that have borrowed trillions of dollars collectively. And there is not enough volume on the backside of that to cover this. And 3.5 years ago, I did a video, I did a whole series where I pretty much explained this, that like there's no mathematical way to keep this going unless you're going to have a bunch of kids. And if you have disincentivized Gen X, millennials, and Zoomers, and even alphas now, you have not only disincentivized some of them, you've actually made it biologically impossible through your media nonsense of telling kids to chop body parts off of themselves, that they cannot do that now. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just telling you the truth. Biologically speaking, okay, this is hard science we're talking about. We're not talking about some alternate universe. We're talking like here on Earth, where we all have to kind of deal with everything as it is. Okay, we got to take it as it comes, right? So when you do something like this, you disincentivize this generations of people to have kids. Well, then you're going to get an even faster decline to the mean. To the point where you have like Gen Xers have maybe 1 or 2 kids. Millennials, a lot of them don't have any, right? They have a dog, or they have 2 cats, right? And many of them can't afford any of that anyway. Even if they did want to have kids, they got to be able to afford all that. And if you crush the wages, and I've tried to explain this to libertarians. I've tried explaining it to Republicans. I've tried to explain it to the so-called right-wing people. They don't understand it. Even most of the people on the left don't understand it. But I mean, they at least kind of pay lip service to it. That they sort of understand it, even though they really don't. But I've tried to explain the wages thing. You don't raise minimum wage because you're trying to solve poverty. That'll never solve poverty. You raise minimum wage to collapse the dollar and bring back reality to the marketplace. And then all this goes away. This illusion of wealth, all this fake wealth, all these fake billionaires go away. That all goes away. And then you actually get to find things at what's called the cash price, the real price, the actual asset price. So no $400,000 322 houses that are like dilapidated and like that have like that are just filled with like half the walls are just beehives and like just total neglect. You let those things go, and what happens is they sell for cash, which is, if I were to use dollars today, and today's dollars, it'd be about $4,000 or $5,000. I didn't stutter. I didn't mean 40 or 50,000. No, $4,000 or $5,000. That's really all a lot of this stuff's worth. Assuming you're not going to flood the country with illegals or legals, right? If you're going to flood the country with a bunch of Biden's, silver alert illegals, well, okay, that'll prop that madness up. And if you're going to flood it with a bunch of Trump's legals, it'll prop that madness up. Or this whole M&A activity that we're talking about now and stuff, which is just like, oh my God, the dollar's failing, the country's failing, it's all falling apart. Quick, let's merge with another company like Canada and Greenland. I mean, just, come on. It's exactly what it seems like. So, let's see. We're in summer. Sydney has 4 seasons. And let's see here. It did rain. Interesting. Okay, so you are still available to download the app, but no update. That's what I'm told. I'm told it's going to be kind of all over the place. I know I'm behind on a bunch of you guys. Sorry, I wasn't trying to give you like the whole lesson all in one and stuff. But this stuff is important stuff to know. And unfortunately, it's not one of those things. Howdy. It's not one of those things that. It's not something that's really talked about. And I don't know that there are too many people that are talking about this kind of stuff because they still use the terms like, and for example, in 2008, right, we had the so-called financial crisis. There was no such thing as a financial crisis. A bunch of rich people paid too much and should have lost a bunch of money. That's all that should have happened. The average American would have been just fine if all those banks would have failed, collapsed, gone away. That's all that would happen. I mean, like the average American is not hurt. Like I have people ask me. There was someone else actually. Let me answer a question. Somebody asked me like, what happens if the dollar collapses? Nothing for the average American. Not a whole lot different. I mean, it's going to be just kind of business as usual. You'll just have to come up with a different way to be paid for all your work. If companies want to have something done, they'll have to find some other way to compensate you for your time. So that's how it works. I mean, if dollars don't work, men don't work for dollars. They work for what the currency of the day, wherever it is, will buy. That's what they work for. And if it doesn't buy anything, then they're going to stop working. Just reality. In terms of investing in metals, which would you be recommending? I believe in diversification, like silver and gold, personally. But again, I mean, in terms of metals, my personal favorite is still gold, because it is a monetary metal. However, silver is massively undervalued in terms of dollars. Measured in dollars, silver is drastically undervalued by comparison. Will there ever be a snapback in that market? Maybe one day, if they ever allow the markets to correct. But I mean, like what I was just talking about, right? They have to allow the markets to correct, and they're not going to do it. Because remember, think of it like this. Let's use our restaurant analogy. Let's continue this. Really, just to answer this question, let me continue that analogy. Imagine that not just you and your restaurant ran to the bank and said, I need $1 million to expand my operation. What if literally every business in town went to the bank and said, we need to borrow a bunch of money to expand because, oh my God, we're growing. And the bank said, the bank was stupid enough to go, yeah, you're right. This is clearly sustainable. So let's go ahead and loan you guys just whatever you need right now. Well, now you have a whole bunch of businesses who cannot pay any of that back, like not even by half. And now you have an insolvent bank, completely insolvent bank. Yeah, now you have a real problem, because now you have the whole town about to go under. So now we just pretend. Now we just pretend that all this is great. That's exactly what they're doing. And so we'll just keep pretending. We'll keep funneling some money around. We'll keep letting you refinance and refinance and refinance and never have to pay any of this back. Like that's, yeah. So will they ever, like just like a video I did, I don't know. I addressed this about 4 months ago or something, like 3-4 months ago, where I pointed that out. That is any of this ever gonna correct? Not as long as you keep taking dollars. Not as long as the world keeps accepting them. No. Let's see. Glad I made it to your live. Just joined. Howdy, howdy. Yes, welcome to Dawn One. Let's see here. Agreement in terms of ladder value for, say, hard currency. Would the world still value gold as a time? Again, I mean, to answer that question, like it has historically, because, well, again, as you guys have heard me talk about this a dozen times, that it either golden ways or it doesn't. It's pure or it's not. You have it or you don't. That's it. And so that becomes a monetary unit of measurement when you're talking about the physical, actual metal, not the paper. Make sense? So yeah, I mean, it really depends. And in terms of digital transactions, no, there is actually better technology, and that would be the B word, the orange internet money that we don't talk about, because if I talk about this, then nobody sees my content for whatever reason. The algorithms hate it. So, and it's not, I know why the algorithms hate it, because all of these big companies that owe all this money in dollars, they don't want to promote that technology. And remember, if you guys understand the rules, if you're a billionaire, for those of you who don't understand the rules of being a billionaire, let me explain. To be a billionaire, you have to agree to borrow a bunch of money. And when you agree to borrow a bunch of money as a billionaire, you not only agree to borrow the money, you also agree to the terms and conditions that go with that money. It's not just, oh, pay it back with 5%, if only it were that simple. No. It's pay it back with 5%, plus here's a list of topics you will not talk about. Here's a list of topics that you will push the agenda on. Like, this is unfortunate reality. And the deeper you go into that, the deeper you go into that propaganda machine. That's just reality. And it's pretty obvious nowadays. I mean, when you look at how quickly a lot of these billionaires just change their minds instantly, you're like, what? Hold on. You were on, like, what the hell? Yeah, it's because they're just going with, they got the phone call and said, hey, you need to stop talking about that. In fact, actually, you need to talk about this other thing now. And then the fake billionaire, just starts talking about something else. Yeah, that's how it works. Did you see someone introduced a consumption tax bill? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't support any of these things personally. I mean, you could talk to me we could have a conversation about a possible consumption tax. Although, I mean, tariffs are enough, actually. I mean, they really are. Tariffs are actually enough. You don't need to have a consumption tax. You don't need to have income taxes, property taxes, death taxes. You don't need to have any of that stuff. Tariffs are enough. You don't need any more than that. That is more than enough to run the country. But you have to actually go ahead and start, spending less, right? It means you just have to stop. You have to stop your spending. Okay. That's why it's like, oh, we're going to bring in a bunch of tariffs in and we're going to do this. Okay, well, I thought we were getting rid of the IRS. How about we get rid of the IRS first? How about let's pull the plug on that first? In other words, no more. And like, this is the American people. This is classic Americana right here. Classic American people. We promise to do this for you. Go ahead and agree to all these taxes first. You're doing business with a bunch of known liars, right? You're doing business with a bunch of known liars. And it's sort of like, why would you not join the military? You're telling me you're going to sign a contract in the military, and the people who are issuing the contract reserve the right to change the contract basically anytime they want? Come on, nobody in their right mind would agree to that, right? I mean, if you really understood that, you wouldn't agree to that. Even a 10-year-old kid would probably not agree to something like that if they really kind of understood how contracts work. Like, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to write the contract, and anytime I want to change the contract, it's totally at my discretion, and you're at my mercy to just, come on. No, that's nonsense. No, the American people need to actually start saying things like, hey, let's go ahead and how about you undo a bunch of taxes first? How about we just abolish the IRS altogether? Then we can talk about some taxes. We can have that conversation after you perform for us this time. But Americans never that, so you guys are too chicken for that. What's your name, buddy? Axel. Thoughts on automatic trucks? Oh yeah, somebody saw the trucking video, or the trucking report video. That was I think that was like my 15th or 16th trucking report video, and it just took off and went crazy. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. I understand the whole idea of why the trucking companies want to put automatic transmissions in there, because from their perspective, they want to be able to throw anybody in there in a pair of flip-flops and a tank top and say, man, go to it. Have at it, man. Just point the truck in that direction and go. Don't worry about hitting a bridge. Don't worry about don't worry about securing that load. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about how to load the trailer so it's not, side heavy or anything. Don't do any of that. Just here's the keys, good luck and goodbye. Yeah, I mean, as opposed to the manual transmission trucks, I drove a manual transmission. That's what I was trained on. My personal vehicle is an automatic, but that's just because of the type of vehicle I drive. But my preference, if given the opportunity, is going to be more for manual transmission. It's the same with my wife. She's the same way. She'd prefer a manual transmission. I think that the going to the automatic trucks lowered a lot of standards, as opposed to people who had to take time to learn all this stuff. Too many guys I've seen, hit my truck backing into a truck stop. I'm in a truck stop, and I'm one of those guys that if I get to a truck stop a little early and there's lots of parking, dude, I park in the furthest corner I can find in that truck stop. I'm no joke. I mean, I put my truck as far away as possible, and if I have a way to actually back out, straight out or something like that, I'll nose in. Just that way I can be left alone, and I don't have to listen to somebody's reefer running all night long. And because it's inevitably that's what happens. Is I get some reefer truck will park next to me, and their belts squeak, and they're constantly clunking and breaking down. So they're never like brand new Thermo Kings. It's always something like, it's always some broken down nonsense, and that just grinds all night long and wakes you up. But yeah, I try to park as far away as possible, and it doesn't matter. I will still get backed into. So just how it is, man. My truck has been hit 3 times so yeah. So what do you mean? What's my real? That's Axel's my name. Come on. It's spelled AXEL, not LE. I don't know. Although I get mail for that guy too. I get mail for him. I get mail for Alex. I get mail for cart, sort, resident, occupant. People call me all kinds of things. And let's see here. GDP, not the fake economy type. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by positive GDP. Yeah, positive GDP meaning that like it's your actual GDP based on genuine growth as opposed to just dollar printing. I saw somebody, there was I'm not picking on this person, but I mean, somebody was posting like, well, yeah, but look at the numbers, the stock market and all this stuff's up. Like, that's not actual economic growth. That's dollar printing. That's not the same thing. You can make all those things go up. That's my prediction right now for the Trump administration. It's going to be, look at that stock market while everybody goes broke. Credit card delinquencies are the highest they've ever been. I think it was just a couple of days ago they were pointing this out. By way of unusual whales, they were saying something like, yeah, credit card delinquencies and defaults are now like at 2000. They're above 2008 levels. They're approaching record levels of defaults. Yeah, that's triage. That's triage. That's all that is. That's just people looking at their bills and going, this is impossible. The math doesn't math. Just today I was having a conversation with a neighbor, and we were talking about this problem that we see, that we both see this issue. And lots of people I know are seeing this issue. They're looking at other people out there, right? Now, comparison's the thief of joy. I get that. But they're looking at everybody and they're going, hold on a second here. You have like 3 brand new cars, a jet ski, house full of furniture, a bunch of credit cards, and you've got a $7,300 a month mortgage, and you work for like an oil company or something, but like when you do the math on this, you're like, dude, hold on a second here. Unless that oil company is paying you like before taxes, like 290 grand a year, how the hell are you affording any of that? How are you paying for any of this, right? Where's all this money coming from? And yeah, the math on math, right? There was I reposted because it's really hilarious to watch my landlords, freak out on the video and stuff. I reposted that infamous landlords video. It's had like 4 million views or some crazy thing like that. And I love the vitriol and the hatred that I get from the landlord bros, the rent seekers that say, well, I'm doing great and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, okay, yeah, I mean, you can do great. And I'm not saying I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm pointing out that the math doesn't work. Median income in this country is about $80K a year with 2 people working. And that number hasn't really changed very much. Not as much as what you guys are wanting for these ridiculous rents. Not as much as people are paying for all these cars. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like this, at a certain point, the numbers just aren't adding up. All it is just debt upon debt upon debt upon debt. There was a TikTok creator, like 3 or 4 days ago, I happened to see this dude. He was talking about, he says, dude, all of this is fake. All of this. He says, all these people, dude, they are so far in debt to pay for all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's really horrible. Once again, it's like just debt upon debt upon debt upon debt. Nothing good. Nothing, like, well, what's going to happen? Nothing good. Nothing good. Silver's more useful, but it's whether gold is rare. I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't follow you. But yeah, silver is pretty useful. Let's see here. Yeah, I've already answered the name question, dude. I'm not going to answer it again. So, I mean, whoever you are, you can just, you can figure it out. Great to see you live. Thank you very much. What's up? I'm just doing my thing, my friend. Fighting the power, but the man keeps holding me down. Is that why they overruled Roe v. Wade? I don't know. Roe v. Okay, so look, I'm not an expert on the abortion issue. I'm really not. I'm probably the last guy you would come to for any type of thought on this. I'm kind of a constitutionalist kind of guy, so Roe v. Wade was bad constitutional law, and it was. I mean, it was bad from the beginning. They really shouldn't have been involved. It really was a states matter issue, and it should have just been left to the states. And most states probably would have just left it legal and just moved on. As I understand, abortion really wasn't a big hot button argument until there was like a couple of churches that got involved, and they found that it kind of amped people up, and so then it once again, it's like it's playing to the base, as opposed to looking at it logically. Now, my stance on it, I don't think people should do it. I think that people should be responsible. I think that 99% of all of the physical, how do I want to say it this way on a live stream on TikTok? If you go to the internet, okay, and I want to say this delicately, and you look up, if you're male or female, it doesn't matter, and you look up adult relations, okay, 99.9% of all of those videos, there's at least a couple hundred of them on the internet, right? Okay. 99.9% of all those videos will not result in a pregnancy. Okay. I'm just saying. Just seems like common sense. Okay. Do you have any other? Yes, I do. I'm on YT. You can look. I think that I had to go with like Financial Physics 7541 on YT, and Financial PHYS. So at Financial PHYS on former Bird site, and I am there, and I'm also on Rumble and stuff to a lesser extent. I'm still trying to figure out Nostr. I'm working on it, man. I mean, I only keep up with so much of this stuff and do everything else I got to do. Let's see here. Yeah, I want a plane too. P-51 is Financial Physics. Your real name? No, it's Axel, dude. Come on. Let's see here. It's all economics. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it can be broken down to it. Economics, biology are similar. Yeah, they are. There's a lot of similarity to it's. I'm not sure what you would call it. I guess you could call it like there's sort of a symmetry, sort of a rhythm to existence here on Earth, and so a lot of things rhyme. They all kind of fit in the same. Not to get all new agey and existentialist about it, but yeah, I mean there is just that. My hat fell down. All right. So, do you have any thoughts on technologies being suppressed to prop up the economy? Well, I think it depends on the type of technologies you're talking about. Let me give you an example. I mean, the biggest one that people that I've had in the past, people have talked with me about it. They'll say like, well, because I'm in the electricity business, and they'll say something like, well, they're suppressing free electricity. That's not really a thing. And I hate to break that to, because I know there's a lot of movies, there's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of people say, no, it can be done free and everything. Like, there really isn't anything free. Most everything is going to have a cost to it. You can have any civilization you want in this world if you're willing to maintain it, right? Let me say that again. You can have any civilization you want as long as you're willing to maintain it. And part of that maintenance is understanding that everything is going to have a cost. Your goal is efficiency. You're talking to a physicist as well. So, I mean, like, your goal is efficiency. That's what you want to have as the most efficient. And the way you do that is by not lying to yourself. That's the first thing. You be honest, be upfront about it, and go, okay, now we need to figure this out. So, are there technologies that are suppressed that are probably beneficial to people? Well, I think that many of the technologies that are probably suppressed probably have to do more with just something being a bit more efficient. In my opinion, in terms of electricity, it's actually more efficient to create your own electricity. It is more efficient because then you're creating electricity when you want to use it. But everybody disagrees on how to do that. Like, oh, solar panels or wind or something like that, and it's like the cost to produce those things is too great. It's actually just cheaper to use other forms of fuel and convert it. And then ideally, if you're going to convert that, also convert the heat energy that you have into hot water, and in northern climates use it for hydroponic or hydronic heat, radiant heat, which is, again, your ideal is to be as efficient as possible with it, as to the extent practicable, right? My best financial decision was moving to white Christian off the grid community. Yeah, I mean they're if they exist. Earth systems engineering is better. Earth systems engineering is better than economics. So I don't know exactly what you mean, but if you've heard me talk about the isms, right, which is capitalism, communism, socialism, national socialism, fascism, collectivism, corporatism, all these different isms, those are systems of management. That's all those are. They're not really an economic system. An economic system is something that you do naturally. That's just commerce. That's just existence. You're just doing your thing, and then you're trading. You're engaged in trade, right? You're willing to trade your time or skill or both or something for something else, right? Okay, well, so that's just it. I mean, as far so I mean, like, if you're talking about profitability for the people running the systems, well, yes, it's quite profitable to run communism. Communism is very profitable, man. Anytime somebody, gives you any grief, you just, they go to the pit, right? Capitalism is very profitable for people. Anytime somebody, says, "Hey, I want to raise because I'm doing all the work," they say, "Oh, well, we're going to replace you with, somebody from somewhere else, some other country." So, it's really a mistake for your second question authority. Educational background. Only reason I ask is because you're unique. Nobody would believe me if I told you. It's why I don't go into it very often. It's boring. It's my upbringing is extremely boring, and there's no excitement. There's no me diving over the hood of a car with two guns, blazing in slow motion with like pigeons in slow motion in the background and stuff. With like this none of that. Okay, I mean, like, this, my upbringing is pretty boring and neglectful. No, if I were to encapsulate it, I was left a lot to my own devices, which is why I have the opinions I do. Because when you're left to your own devices, you're left to actually look at the world for what it actually is. And when you see it for what it is, as opposed to having your mind polluted by by academia, right, by the school system and academia, when you push back on all of that, you'll notice that you get in a lot of trouble, right? Well, I noticed that too. So if I push back on something, I got in a lot of trouble. Like, oh, well, so, and I noticed that this is the way you train a dog. It's the way you do train anybody, right? You reward good behavior. What's good behavior? Good behavior is you agree with me on everything, right? That's good behavior. Bad behavior is, oh my gosh, hold on, what, you want to be paid for this? Oh, we can't have that. That's bad behavior. Yeah, that's just it. And so when you notice that, as I did, unfortunately, I was about age 8. I noticed all this. Okay, now I can articulate it now as an adult, but I wouldn't have been able to articulate that as a kid. But something's wrong, right? I mean, you were all kids at one point, little kids. You guys were all little kids at some point. I'm hoping that there's no little kids watching this, but because this is technically an 18 and over stream, but we were all little kids at one point, and as little kids, we know something is very wrong. We know when something's up, don't we? Every kid knows when there's something up, and they may not be able to put their finger on it, but they know there's something wrong. Somebody's lying to you somewhere. And especially when there's a lot of ambivalence involved. Kids don't do well with ambivalence. They don't do well with hypocrisy. They don't do well with, you shouldn't smoke, kids. Yeah, they don't do well with that, right? Because they're like, hold on, what do you mean I shouldn't smoke, but yet you're like chain smoking? Yeah, kids don't do well with that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so I mean, after having grown up and seeing everything for what it is, that's what it is. Educational background, as far as, if you're talking about in the collegiate sense, or if you're talking about in the academic sense, there are no plaques on my walls. I have no plaques, no ribbons, no certificates, no appeal to authority of any kind that sit on my walls. I am, for all intents and purposes, a complete nobody in this world. And if I did my job right, you'll never know I was even here. Let's see here. Oh, come on. I lost this thing again. It went like ballistic on me. It went freaking crazy. Let's see here. Man, it went way back. Sorry about this. It went like super back. My God, how many comments were there? Okay. Can you talk about how to prepare now for the inevitable? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I would definitely convert personally. I would convert out of your fiat currencies into anything that can't be counterfeited. Does that make sense? Anything that can't be counterfeited, I would convert into that. I don't care what it is, and something that's useful to you. Okay, useful, very important. Okay, so it's not just something that is in the abstract sense. It's something that's actually useful to you. That's my opinion on this, because I mean, like, you also have to live life as well. You can't just. A lot of people are waiting to live life. They're getting ready to get prepared, to get thinking about possibly getting ready to get prepared to maybe get started in life. Like, you can't do that. That's just not, like, you can't get ready to get ready to get ready to get ready. I mean, you're here, right? So, I mean, this is, this is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time, right? So, like, this is why you want to find things that are useful to you and that ideally can't be counterfeited. Hollywood gets a bailout. Appalachia gets $750. Yeah, I know. I saw that. Everybody has seen that. The whole world has seen that. And I'm not picking on you. I'm just pointing out, like, dude, everybody's seen this. And we all know that this is completely unsustainable, what they're doing. This is the madness that we're seeing set in, the mass psychosis that starts at the top. Mass psychosis starts at the top. It is. Some of you have seen that video recently. I know there's been like a big wave of new followers recently on TikTok, right near the end of TikTok, right? But yeah, there's been like, and it's like, yeah, so some people are like binge watching like a bunch of my videos. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, that's just it. I mean, this is just to be expected. This is a mass psychosis. This happened in Rome. It happened at the end of the Soviet Union. Now, you didn't hear about it because the Soviet Union had kind of that Iron Curtain thing going on, but it happened there too. People just start going crazy. They don't know what they're doing anymore. They've lost all sense of competence. They have no idea why they're doing anything, right? I mean, how many people are watching this right now are truck drivers? Sound off. Just say whatever. Just put truck driver in the comments or something like that. Okay, and I'll get to it in a second. But I mean, my point is that, like, truck drivers have been doing it for a long time. They'll all tell you the same thing. You have people that you get on the phone with some broker somewhere, and the guys that the broker is talking to, they have no idea what they're doing. They're just throwing out whatever somebody told them that made sense 5 years ago. Does that load need to be tarped, for example? I mean, I'll ask that question. I'm at flatbed, so I mean, I'll ask a question. Does it need to be tarped? And they're like, yes. Okay. What is it that I'm hauling? Oh, pipe. Why am I tarping that? We don't know. That is not an answer, because, dude, I've never tarped pipe. So in my life, especially drill pipe. Come on. Let's see here. Number 7. Became number 7 on the team. You got a gift. Oh, thank you for Don Juan. Thank you. I still don't know what any of these gifts are, by the way. I mean, like, people give me these gifts all the time. I have no clue what you guys are giving me. I'm sorry, and it's not anything personal. It's like, I have no clue what you're giving me, because I don't know enough about the back end of TikTok. That I know that there's a lot of people that are really into all that stuff. And don't get me wrong. And hey, I mean, I'm a giver, so I have no problem receiving. But like I have no idea what a lot of stuff means. So maybe someone can educate me sometime. You are so real. Well, I try to be and stuff. I mean, if you think I'm real and stuff, I've done my job. I'm actually a bot from another dimension. I mean, it should be the hair, right? It's aliens, right? Anyway, my hair won't do it today. So I've had my hat on all day, so it's as smash as I can make it. Do you have any thoughts on technologies means prop up the economy? I went through that. Brilliantly explained. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I do my best. Some of the comments in live were filtered out to protect the community's experience, probably. Blink twice. All right. I think insurance is next, but they still get a bailout too. Yeah, they will. I mean, that's just it. Insurance, by definition, has to be bailed out, because, as you guys have all heard me talk about, or maybe some of you are brand new, insurance is an unworkable Ponzi scheme. There's no way they can pay out in claims what they take in premiums. Otherwise, you would never pay the premiums, because the premiums would be they would take out the maximum number of claims and then divide that out among the people and say, okay, here's our socialized losses, here's our privatized gains, and here's your socialized losses, and it would be not not mathematically possible to do any of that. It's just not. And take out money to pay dividends to shareholders and pay taxes and pay for all the army of people to deal with all the regulations and stuff. There's just no mathematical way to do any of this stuff. So no, I mean, like, that's why insurance always has to have a bailout. It always has to go running to the government for a bailout. It's just how it is. Stop trading time for fiat money. Yeah, exactly. If anybody can do it, that's the way to do it. Copper massively slept on. It might very well be. I recycle and sell used car tires. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know guys who made good money in that, particularly back in the 90s and the early 2000s. I knew guys that made really good money buying used tires and then just selling them, and putting them on balance. They buy a balancer and everything. And I mean, guys did that. There's a guy down the road from me that they're on a strip mall. They do it right out in the parking lots. It's awesome. So, brother, really good content. Thank you so very much. Copper's good as well. Well, yeah. It's the only challenge with copper is, like, if you want to have like a large amount of wealth in copper, it's like the size of your house, right? We've been pretending since Nixon took us off. Yeah, exactly. 1971 was the last gasp of all this, where Richard Milhouse Nixon convinced the world that the dollar was better than gold, and he did so actually in a very clever way by saying, "Well, look, if we all have to go to gold, then we're all going to go broke, because there is no way for any of you in any country to keep all the crazy promises you people have made to all of your people," which is the truth, right? Which means that every one of the world leaders, the people are going to have a meeting with the heads of state and remove them, literally. And that's so that was a pretty good convincing job that Nixon had. And like, well, maybe we better rethink this. Let's just go ahead and stick with this dollar hegemony thing and see what happens to it. Let's see where this Ponzi scheme goes. Let's see where this strange torpedo takes us. Yeah, that's kind of it. You think we should go back to the gold standard? If you go back to the gold standard, my position on that would be to go back to physical gold. No paper gold. And that's going to be a tough one, because how do you do international transactions, right? Without sending like a battleship, without burning a bunch of diesel to move gold around? Like, how do you go, you know what I'm saying? Because that was the challenge. That was the idea, is like, okay, well, we'll have a reserve bank of gold bars. And when a country, we move gold bars from one vault to the next and so forth. But the problem is that then we make the assumption that those are actually gold bars and not tungsten. That was the problem. And that's still the problem now. Who audits the auditors, right? That's kind of it's sort of like who watches the watchers. Okay, that's the problem with it. So it slows the economy down quite a bit. Now, I would make the argument, by the way, as I would with the birth rate thing, that maybe it's not such a bad idea to slow it down a tiny bit. Maybe it's not such a bad idea for people to not do 50 transactions every single day on a whim, right? Maybe it's not a bad thing to say, oh, I found something on Amazon and I bought it immediately. Maybe that's not a bad thing to say, well, I found something on Amazon, but I have to go somewhere and I have to pull some coin out and I have to go someplace and buy it. Maybe it's not a bad thing to slow that down. Now, from a business standpoint, of course, if you're one of the oligarchs, you don't want that to slow down, because your payments are due, on all the zillions of dollars you've borrowed from these fake bankers. But if you own your property, you own your business, you own your means of production, the whole bit, you own all that stuff privately, yourself, well, if it's slow, it's slow, right? That's when you go and make motorized bar stools, right? I mean, how many people out there are old enough to remember this? I know there's quite a few of my followers are younger, but how many of you out there, my old guys, right? My guys that are like, I don't know, 50 plus or something like that, 55 plus, that remember things like, ridiculous cars that people would build in their garage, like farmers would build in the off season, and they would send them to car shows, and they would be like these weird show cars, right? Yeah, it's because guys had free time. They had free time to do weird pursuits. They had time to build crazy stuff. They had time to invent things as well that nobody had ever seen, right? They had time to do that kind of stuff. See, right now, nobody has any time. Right now, nobody has any time or money. They're in the worst possible scenario, right? Everybody's freaking broke, and they have no time on top of that. So they're running around 1,000,000 miles an hour, and they're broke on top of it. How messed up is that? That's a pretty sorry state of affairs, if you ask me. Yeah, that's where people are at right now. So Yeah, I mean, you had people that had time to do that kind of stuff. So I might make the case, hesitantly, but I might make the case to say, well, maybe having this like constant everything all the time existence, instantly on a whim, maybe that's not exactly the best way to go about things. I'm not preaching anti-consumerism. Don't start lumping me into that. Although I will say hyper-consumerism is getting a little annoying because it leads to the cheapest possible existence. It does. And I don't want to be mean about this, but like, come on, we've all seen it. We've all bought those products on TikTok Shop at some point, and we get them and they're like, dude, this is garbage. Yeah. And it's becoming, and I don't mean, I'm not just picking on TikTok Shop, I'm not just picking on Amazon, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just pointing out that like even the food that you go to a restaurant, right? My wife and I got invited to a dinner, and we're like, where are we supposed to meet? Where do you want to go? And I cringe when I get asked that, because like I'm so hesitant to want to go to restaurants anymore, because it's like, and you all know what I'm talking about. You get there and you're afraid, not that the food's going to be like poisonous or anything, but it's going to be like, is the food going to be any good for the amount of money I'm about to spend? I'm about to drop basically about $110 for 2 people. Is it really going to be worth that? Or is it better off to just make something really good at home? Because both my wife and I cook, and we're both fairly good at it. And you know what I mean? I mean, I did it professionally. We both did it professionally. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, Fort Knoxville, yeah, no kidding. They refuse to lose. That is exactly what the problem is. It's sort of like, it really is like playing a game with a bunch of 6-year-olds. Again, let me talk to you kids out there, right? Let me talk to your inner child for a moment here. I want you to channel your inner child. Let me get all misty here with you and stuff, and let's center our cheese for just a second and have this conversation with your inner child. Remember what it was like to play games with a 6-year-old? And all the 6-year-olds, and then when somebody started getting good at something, and then they started winning, and the more popular kids started screaming, we need to have a new rule. That's exactly what this is. Let's have a new rule because, oh my God, it's the overheated economy. Oh my God, the economy's overheating. Why is it overheating? Well, poor people are paying off too much debt. We can't have that. That's just how it is. See, that is why problem. That's why it's so problematic that these billionaires are now connected to the white. Yeah, it is. It is a big problem. It is. It's always been a problem. There's always been wealth has always influenced politics and so on. But it used to be that there wasn't this huge wealth gap. What causes the wealth gap? Let me help I know that there's some of my commie followers are going to see this and such and so. And if you don't, I'm going to try. I'll try and look for this post and I'll clip it and I'll put it out there on the internet for everybody to see. But for my commie followers who talk about the wealth inequality, man, wealth inequality exists because of fiat currency. Fix the money, that goes away like grease lightning. I'm not kidding. Within 1 year, that's gone. All those fake billionaires, gone in 1 year. Probably not even a year. Probably closer to like 180 days. For real. I mean, it's that bad. Most of the stuff is fake. Just like all those guys, just like those people out there that are like, oh my God, they've got a beautiful house and a $150,000 SUV and a $125,000 SUV, and they've got all this. Dude, they're it's fake. There's so much debt involved, dude. They don't own that stuff. That stuff owns them. To quote Tyler Durden, I don't know. Oath of fealty, that's exactly, yeah, you're talking about the billionaires, that's exactly what it is. They end up swearing an oath of fealty, and it's really horrible. So rich people agree to a list of items. Is this why Elon's, is the Earth is, I don't know. I mean, yes, I know the flat Earth thing. I know, I'm still not on, I haven't chosen a clan on that one. You know me, guys, I don't clan. So, is it flat? Maybe. Is it a sphere? Maybe. Do I care? Not especially. Contract law, yes. Which is your, admiralty or maritime law and everything. Yeah, that is all a real thing. That is a problem. in the country. And it's both good and bad. It's a two-edged sword, which again, it works just fine with a hard currency. Most everything, all these theories that people have work just fine. All right, let me move the little thing over to talk. There we go. All of these theories work just fine with a hard currency. It's when you take out, when you take away the hard currency and you put in a fiat counterfeit currency, then yeah, you have all these problems. I rejected $30,000 a month, 2 hours per day contract for the military to provide AIIP on drones. Yeah, I don't blame you. That's probably a very smart move on your part. I'm all for everyone stopping paying their taxes. Yeah, I've been saying that for years. I've been telling people forever, man. I don't know why anybody's paying taxes anymore. I really don't. I mean, all your money is just going to some other country. That's it. I mean, your money isn't going to... You could make the argument maybe if the money was actually legitimately going to help Americans that were genuinely in need, such as hurricane victims in Florida, hurricane victims in North Carolina, hurricane victims in Georgia, hurricane victims in Texas, fire disasters, even though it was caused by, incompetence. And, I mean, you could make the case with me for that, but that's not what's happening. The money isn't going there. The money's just going to pay a bunch of debt to international bankers. That's the fact. That's just where it is. So, you were a trucker. I still am, actually. I just don't do it as often any longer. I do it because the rates aren't, I go where the rates are. And if the rates aren't super good, I just park my truck. I don't have to, I'm not required to drive at a certain amount. There's no requisite number. I do have to maintain the insurance and everything, but there's no requisite amount of driving I have to do. But yes, as you can see. I just knock over my oil. Yeah, probably. So, people are miseducated and filled with, filled with fear. Yes, exactly. That's why most don't even contemplate these issues. Yeah, exactly. In fact, the reason the Soviet Union finally collapsed was the fear went away. And I don't remember who it was. It wasn't Gorbachev. It was the guy that was right after Gorbachev, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. But he came in and into power, and it seemed like the way that Yuri Molsev, not Benzmanov, but Yuri Molsev, former Soviet economist, a defector who came to the U.S. In his lectures, and I've only taken in a couple of his lectures. They're absolutely brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant lectures, by the way. If you can find any of his stuff on YT, I would absolutely watch it. Those are absolutely gold in terms of lectures, and because he's teaching from the perspective of what we're dealing with right now and why none of this works, because they dealt with this in the Soviet Union. And when that guy got into power, he was the way that Yuri Molsev, the late Yuri Molsev, unfortunately, by the way, describes him is he was a true believer in the system, the true believer in communism. Right? The nobility of communism, if there is such a thing. And so he took away the fear that the state had, and it collapsed immediately right after that. Because it couldn't support itself. It was being supported by fear. And the US right now, all that keeps the US together anymore, it's just fear now. It really is. Fear and greed. And this at this point now, it's to a lesser extent greed. It's more fear now. It really is. This is why they have to constantly be doing all these veiled threats, like the island guy. Remember Island Guy who in jail magically somehow? Yeah, that's meant to say we can get to anybody. It's not a veiled threat. It is what veil? Dude, that's what it is. Do you know of Little Greek? He was awesome. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know too many people, by the way. I get invited every now and again on podcasts and such, and most of the time it's like I have never met or spoken with these guys. I know them now, but I have never met a lot of people in terms of the. Remember, I don't do content just. I'm not here to be famous, right? If I could beam my thoughts into everybody's heads and you understood how not to be screwed anymore, I would stop doing this and I would go do other stuff. I would go do almost anything else. I would go find there's just a million other things I can go do with my time. And, and I don't mean that in a mean way, and I don't mean that in a way that, like, I'm just telling you that, like, I do this because I genuinely see a need in the marketplace that nobody is filling right now. And I've always been good at that. Every business I've owned, I've always been really good at finding that need first. Now, somebody else may come along and do a whole bunch more and undercut me and everything. Like, okay, fine. Then I just get out of that business and go to something else. I've been in more business. I can't even remember all the different companies I've actually owned. But I've always been pretty good at finding that need. And then right now, there's a need for someone to explain this stuff the way that nobody else is explaining it, because everybody else is trying to make money off of it. They're trying to figure out how to monetize the destruction of the planet as opposed to trying to save it for real. And I'm not talking about with fake gimmicks like make Al Gore rich because of, with like green environment nonsense. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being able to save the actual people that are doing all the goddamn work. Make sense? Because that's the reality. Because, the reality is the future, the real future looks quite dismal. It's very grim when you have a future that doesn't have children. Imagine that. That's pretty grim. Even for people who don't want kids, that's a pretty grim future to think about it. So that's where things are going. And it's because people can't afford it. That's what this is coming down to. And they can't afford it because they're being ripped off. Not because they're making a conscious decision, not because they're spending all their money on booze. Dude, I mean, if you guys were all just spending your money on booze and stupidity and stuff like that, dude, whatever. That's why I'm not judging anybody. You can do whatever you want with your money. I don't care. I don't care what you're putting into what orifice of your body. Do whatever you want. Just be honest about it. And the reality is that more and more people can't afford to do any of that either. So now you just have a bunch of people running around trying to work to get ready to live their life at some point when they go retire, maybe in their 70s. That is a sad, pathetic slavery existence. That's just reality. So, where's your reading comments? I don't see any of them here. I don't know either on your end, sorry. Where do we find you off TikTok? On YT. Okay, I have to be careful because I guess on live streams you can't say certain things, but that would be on YT. Financial Physics 7451 or 7541. Yeah, so Financial Physics 7541 is on YT, and then on X or Birdsite, former Birdsite, hoping I get in trouble. It's just Financial Phys, PHYS at at Financial Phys on over there. If you know if you know the basic economics, this is all. Yeah, it's not even really economics. It's just knowing the math behind it. It's just being able to look at the math and go, dude, this is none of this possible, man. It really is getting that bad. So yeah, I mean, you're right. It's even just some basics of just some basic, not even economics, accounting. If you know basic accounting, none of this is possible. And yes, it is indeed a house of cards. Do you think real estate is stupid? No, yes and no. Let me clarify that, okay? Because I know that there was actually, again, you might be one of them. I'm not saying I'm just saying, but there might be the people on there that the angry rent-seeking landlords that see a video I post and everything, and they're all angry and hate me all the time, and that's fine. You go right ahead and do so. But I'll answer the question. I think that the individual ownership of real estate, of land in your country, if you're an American, or any it doesn't make any difference what nation you're from. I'm just going to talk to Americans for a second here, but this applies to Aussies, it applies to Brits, it applies to people who live in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. It applies to all of you, okay? Everybody out there in the world, if you live in your country and you are a patriot for your country, because you have to live there, and you have to make do with your civilization where you are planted, right? So you should in fact own a piece of that country, right? This is concept of ownership. This is basic, and this is not taught. To my knowledge, I don't know of anybody teaching this now. I don't think even people who claim that they like, nobody teaches this concept of ownership. If you own a piece of your country, then you care about its direction, do you not? In fact, you care more, because like, well, hey, I mean, like, I own a piece of this, so like, I have to kind of care here. I have to at least make an effort on my part. When you remove ownership from the masses, from the people who make up your country, your nation, your tribe, whatever you want to call them, okay, your clan, whatever you want to call them, okay, when you remove ownership from them, they have no incentive at all to really care, right? And this is why we have people complaining about, why are people voting for property taxes? Because there aren't enough property owners. If there's more property owners tend to not vote to increase their taxes, right? So you want to have a nation of people who own. You do not want a nation of people who rent. A nation of people who rent perpetually is destructive. It's extremely destructive. So when you understand that, you understand my position on the whole rent seeker problem. My problem with them isn't that they're renting houses. Like, I don't care about that. Okay, like, that's not the issue. It's that you have a bunch of people who say, I want to have a whole bunch of tenants forever. That's a problem if you live in a country that is not designed nor intended to be a nation of renters. The US in particular was never designed or intended to be a nation of serfs. It wasn't intended for that. It was none of the laws were designed for that. The laws were originally designed for people to own, like actually own property in their country. Okay, we're talking about personal, private property. The idea of private property has unfortunately been expanded into this idea of, well, okay, we can print a bunch of fake dollars and then use those fake dollars to buy up all of this property and call it private property. That is not private property in my mind. Not if you counterfeited a bunch of money. If you counterfeited a bunch of dollars and then you gave it to somebody for, like, put yourself in that situation. What if you were a counterfeiter and you counterfeited a bunch of $100 bills and then you went and bought something with it, right? Where in the law is that a legal transaction? It's not, right? They wouldn't say, oh, hey, you get to keep all this now that you bought. No, that's not how that works, right? You're like, oh, hey, you need to give all that back because you didn't have, well, that's exactly what's happened is you have the bankers that own the United States, that own all your politicians. Each one of them has a banker operative that follows them around apparently everywhere in Congress and tells them what to do. So the bankers that own all of this, and this, by the way, is why they hate TikTok. Going back to my original conversation, this right here, this is why they really hate TikTok. Right, what I'm talking about. Because they don't want people owning, they want people renting. They want people paying rents and interest and everything. That's what they want. They want Pottersville. Go watch It's a Wonderful Life. Last month it was on, well, it was supposed to be on all the time if we had old TV and everything. But go back and rewatch that. And don't rewatch it for a Christmas movie. Rewatch it as an economics lesson because it's exactly what it is. It's an economics lesson. And it's a lesson in banking. It's a lesson in the way that the oligarch thinks to get people owing, constantly having to go back and borrow and borrow and borrow and always be owing. That is exactly what that movie is all about. Frank Capra was a genius, and I assure you, Frank Capra was persona non grata in Hollywood. You can look up, the legacy of Frank Capra. He wasn't really exactly liked by a lot of people in Hollywood. He was liked by Jimmy Stewart and a few others. But he would have been like sort of like your, I'm trying to think of the equivalent. He would be sort of like your Clint Eastwood of the day, back in the 40s, 30s, 40s kind of thing. He'd have been sort of the Clint, he's not down with this whole agenda of pushing all this weird propaganda on the American people. No, he wasn't. He was actually trying to explain what was going on, which is why if you watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is also another Frank Capra film, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious his stance. These are black and white movies, okay? I don't mean black and white as in like good and bad. I'm talking about like they're actually black and white. I think Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was made in like 1938, I think. It's been a little while, but anyway, go watch it. And that will explain it. So The concept of ownership has been robbed from kids. They don't understand it now. They don't understand, like, you are supposed to own, not supposed to be forever renting. And we have a nation of people, unfortunately, that have, rent seekers and boomers and bankers and other people who go down this road who exploit this constantly. They're not exploiting the workers. No, what they're doing is they're exploiting the banking system, and they're pumping these prices up and then saying, okay, look, hey, I paid a bunch of money for this. I overpaid for all of this. Okay, so now you need to overpay too. That's exactly what's happened. And so, yeah, I mean, like, this is, and so it drives these fake prices up, but wages didn't keep up with any of it, and they can't. They can't. The whole point of inflation, by the way, just so you know, for anybody out there, the point of inflation is that you can't keep up with it. If you could keep up with inflation, then there's no point in having inflation. I hope that makes sense. The point of inflation is that you can't keep up with inflation. That's the point of inflation. That's a feature. That's not a bug. That's a feature. That's designed into the system. Okay? And I don't care what ism you want to call it. It's designed into it. It's a system of control. It's a system of farming. That's all it is. So it's designed that you can never keep up with it. And it ruins your ownership. That said, I think personal real estate is very important. Do I think that it's a good idea to go create a whole bunch of nation of renters? No. I think, in fact, actually the consequences of that are actually more detrimental than you can realize. And of course, none of the rent seekers want to hear this, but this is the truth. People eventually stop caring about you, because why should they care about you? Why should they care about your ownership? They don't own anything. What do they care? That's the problem. And before you know it, it's like people become indifferent to anything that happens to you. You get shoved down a flight of stairs and crack your head open and such because, that actually happened to a rent seeker. People become indifferent to it, right? They get Brian Thompson on the streets of New York. People become indifferent to it. Okay? I mean, like, this is just reality. And if you want to prevent that, it's very easily preventable. You stop doing that kind of stuff. You stop looking at people as economic units, and you start looking at them as, like, well, are these your countrymen? Are they not? You don't have to be their keeper. You don't have to do anything for them. In fact, you don't do anything for them, but you can stop ripping them off. That you can do. You don't have to make good for anybody. You can not rip someone off, and you can just say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. I can actually go do my own thing, and and as long as you own stuff and you're not hugely in debt, then it's very easy to live life on your terms. I've already covered the live life here. I'll cover this at retirement some other time. So, Axel, what is your name? There you go. LA fires and insurance companies. I talked about it earlier on. I think the LA fires are going to be bailed out. I mean, all the insurance companies that are there, that they're going to be forced to pay off for all that stuff. They will be forced to pay for it, because the people that are there in those areas, they have money, and so they'll just sue them into submission, and so they're going to get bailed out, and so that means that the American people get to eat all of that. That's what that means. The American people as a whole are going to eat however many billions and billions of dollars. And if they say it's 58 or 60 billion dollars for the damage, it'll be 350 by the time they're all said and done, which means it'll be 450, which means that it really want to just make it just $500 billion, and even $500 billion, and call it good. And then of course, we need to send a bunch of money to other countries too, for whatever reason. So it'll be just make it $1 trillion and call it good. That's all that's going to happen. That's all that's going to happen. I mean, the first omnibus spending bill that Trump gets on his desk is going to probably be like $5 trillion. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Financial physics, what is it supposed to mean? I did a whole video on that a while back, and I explained it and everything, but I'll give you the brief of it. The financial physics is just the physics of finance. That's all it is. And it has to do with units of measurement, accurate units of measurement. You can't have physics without an accurate unit of measurement. Right? Why do you think that physicists use the speed of light? Because it's a constant. Okay. Now we're not going to go into the argument of, well, they changed the speed of light back in the 30s. Yeah, I know they did, but they still came up with some kind of fixed unit of measurement after that, and since then they haven't changed it. So if you in other words, if you measure anything to a fixed unit of measurement, then you can have accurate. An accurate yardstick of what's going on in the world. That also implies or includes finances. That includes money. If you have an accurate unit of measurement, then you can have an accurate, view of the economy. Right now, we're supposed to have, like, there's this idea of like, oh, well, let's have a hierarchy of, of competence, right? Let's have a hierarchy. How do you have a hierarchy of competence when you print dollars from nothing? You can't, because there's no way to measure competence at that point. Because, like, well, but the smartest people make the most money. Really? You're no. No. If that were true, then why are there dumb rich people? So it's not true. No, there's plenty of dumb rich people, and there's plenty of really smart poor people. So that theory doesn't hold water. That means that you don't actually have any accurate use for it. So dollars are not a unit of measurement. So if you have an accurate unit of monetary measurement, then you can actually then start applying physics to it, and you can see very quickly when things are going to fall apart. That's the application of financial physics. Let's see here. Pan left show the driveway. It's actually pan. No. Yeah, no, I didn't spit on the Jeep. It's actually, for me, it's pan right. That's the driveway out there. Let's see here. Thinking the moral issue out of it, they overturned the, for more Matrix food. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, that's possible. That any number of things that a lot of politicians and billionaires do, they do it for multiple reasons. There's usually a lot of different reasons that they want to do something. So yeah, I mean, they probably did take that out. So I'm assuming you're talking about the moral issue behind abortion. And again, I'm not really the best guy to come to for that, but let's see here. You think Trump is going to crash the housing market? No, I don't think so. I think that I think if anything, he's going to just add gasoline to it, and flood the country with illegals. That's what I think is going to happen. I think all the things that people voted for him for, he's going to do the opposite of everything that he promised to do. That's just my opinion. Now, I could be totally wrong. Maybe he does deport everybody. Maybe he does cut off the H-1Bs. Maybe he does tell his, America's favorite monkey boy, billionaire to step back and screw his own face and say, dude, we're not going to do that. Maybe he does that. I doubt it. Though. I think that Trump is going to try and play all sides. I think he's going to try and grow his way out of this mess. And again, you don't grow your way out of something with a declining population. You have to allow birth rates to increase, and you have to allow it organically. You can't just hold a gun to people's heads and tell them to have kids. I know some of you are into that, but dude, it doesn't work on most people. So, I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, people have to want to have kids organically, and that means that they have to, in most cases, they have to feel as though they're secure and comfortable. This is particularly true for women. They have to feel secure and comfortable to be wanting to crank out the kids. I mean, now, after women feel secure and comfortable and everything, then their legs spread like hot, like whipped butter over a hot steak, and it's no problem. So, let's see here. What do you think of Web3? I have no idea. I don't have enough information on that to give you an opinion. Opinion on firefighters, EMS, first responders in relation to their stance, to my stance on police. I have no opinion on firefighters and EMS. I mean, they do a job, and it is a necessary job. I've met plenty of firefighters. Many of them seem okay. They seem a lot more together mentally upstairs and a lot more stable than cops. I'm saying that objectively, I mean, I harken back to my conversations with off-duty police that were customers of mine. And I can think of one in particular off the top of my head and stuff, big guy, man, 6'3", juiced up and everything. One of the nicest guys ever, who refused to give tickets. He refused to give tickets to people. He flat out, he hadn't written a ticket in something like 19 years, refused to give tickets to people. He'd give them warnings, but he would never, write tickets, because he thought that was actually just really horrible to do that to people. And his idea of police work was old school. He was one of the old school, sort of like a sheriff kind of guy, the kind of old West sheriff who you leave people alone for the most part unless you think they're going to hurt somebody. Then you step in. Until then, you pretty much sit back and you do nothing. That's what the sort of your old West John Wayne kind of sheriff in town that's the kind of guy he was, right? So, you know, in his opinion of cops is where a lot of my opinion came from. He's like, I don't tell anybody in my department where I live. I deliberately go out of my way to make sure they have no clue where I actually live, because I don't trust any of those people, because I know what they're hiring now. They're hiring some of the worst people possible to do those jobs, sadly. And you know, and there are a few good guys out there who get into it, and they start to see that same thing too. And then they start doing the justification thing, because they're already like 6 or 7 years in, and they're like, well, I just got to make the retirement. Just keep the blinders on, you know, keep your head down, your mouth shut, and you make it to the end. That is not the way to go. That's not how you do it, in my opinion. And in my view, I think that that's actually a coward's way out to do that. You know, the bold thing to do would be to, for example, do a TikTok video in uniform like that one cop did, who got fired for doing that. Because he said, I'm not doing any more unconstitutional stuff to people. And they fired him instantly. They fired him, I think, that day, because he refused to take the video down. Because in his video, he was talking about, you know, like, we need to not do this unconstitutional stuff, and we need to not, you know, bend to corruption. I mean, that was basically the entire video. If he took it down, he would be bending to corruption. So he didn't take it down. They fired him that day. That takes guts, my friends. That takes guts, and that's actually respectable. Just like someone who in the military who says, "That's it, I'm out of here. I'm done. Give me my forms, whatever I got to sign. You know, however many mountains of paperwork I got to sign and stuff. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I want nothing to do with any more of this nonsense, and I'm not fighting for some other country's borders. There isn't an amount of dollars you can print. That's all it takes. It's just for a handful of people who can't be bought to say, dude, there isn't an amount of dollars you can give me. There's nothing on this planet that any man can give me that I would particularly want." And I say that personally, even at this stage of the game. I'm like, dude, I'll play the game fair, you know, or I don't want to play it at all. I'm not playing poker with 6-year-olds who are going to cheat. 50 kilowatt generator, free energy. Well, it's free if you paid 15 grand. 2 bachelors. You lost me. Sorry. Let's see here. Pigeons, double guns, John Wood. Yes. It's like a 1% joke, dude. It's for a handful of people who get that. There's very few people who get my sense of humor. Like just very few who get that. So yeah, I mean, congratulations. You're in like the 1% club who get the joke. Let's see here. Hold on. Boy, it scrolled way down on me now. There was like 100. Let's see. Economic Ninja on YouTube monetized. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Sorry. You're smart with the truck the way you operate. Yeah, I mean, at least I try to be anyway. I do the best I can. How long do you think before major collapse? Oh, collapse. Okay, major collapse. Again, it's like, it's up in the air. It depends on you guys. It depends on the people. It depends on if anybody out there is going to take the time to learn about all this stuff and say, dude, I don't want to be part of this anymore. That's all it takes. You know, and the fear has to go away too. People always care more with skin in the game. That's exactly right. And that's the part that's been robbed. That's the part that's been stolen from people, is that they don't have any skin in the game. And there's a relativity involved there. Poor people used to move like way out, and they used to move into like really inexpensive houses. You might call them affordable housing, but that's not, affordable housing unfortunately is sort of a bastardized term now that has turned into this idea of the government subsidizing it. Like, no, they would just move out to where it was just less money to live, and they would just live out there. That was the norm, in fact. And you know, it's just sort of like the drugs and alcohol thing, right? Whenever someone sees the drug and alcohol problem, they go like in Portland or something like that, where they're like, you know, oh my God, there's all these junkies in Portland and so on. It's like, yeah, people used to do that in the privacy of their own home because they had homes. When you make a bunch of people homeless, well, then it's just going to spill out into the street. Who do you think's going to spill out there first? Well, the people that are poor. That's, you know, like, well, but that's what's causing their poverty. Not necessarily. I mean, because whenever someone says that, it's like, I think about like, okay, so what you're saying is that there aren't any rich people. Hunter Biden comes to mind, you know, who apparently is able to afford all of his bad habits. right? If somebody, like, I mean, for most Americans, this is true. Let me indict a lot of you out there. Sadly, a bunch of you out there have this problem where it's like, well, if they're rich and they're doing a bunch of really bad habit type stuff, it's like, well, they're just rich and they've got a problem and they should go to the Betty Ford clinic. Yeah, poor people doesn't work for that. It doesn't work like that for poor people. Poor people, if you want to help poor people, what you do, if they have a substance abuse issue, what you do for poor people is you try to get them to understand what's causing the abuse, because the abuse is them trying to medicate the problem. There's an actual problem that's underlying that, and that's true for all people actually. But but the way that you would solve it is you address the issue that's causing it. What's the underlying issue? Because there's always something behind it, right? Even if it's just boredom. It can be something just simple as boredom, like, I'm just bored. Like, yeah, I know, it can happen. Like, so, people find things to do when they're bored, right? There's one dude, he started stealing. Heard this story. It was actually for an old friend of mine told me the story about this guy. He finally found his juice. He finally found something that he was really, got excited, that really like brought up his endorphins and it turned out it was stealing. And he just started escalating the crimes, and like until he hit like the big time in terms of theft. And yeah, I mean it didn't go well for him, unfortunately, and stuff. I mean he's still alive, as I understand, but I mean but ultimately it led to a lot of problems because like that was like so. And he wasn't stealing by the way to get rich. It wasn't about money. It was about stealing to do something, right? You know what I mean? It's sort of like stealing art, right? You can't really steal the Mona Lisa and then try and sell it. Who would you sell it to, right? I mean, no, you would steal it, and then because you wanted to keep it, you would do it for the juice. You wouldn't, you would do it for the action of it all. You would do it for the whole, diving over the car in slow motion, 2 guns, pigeons, slow motion stuff. Like you would do it for that reason. You wouldn't do it because you want to try and make money off it, because it really wouldn't work, and you're going to get caught. So. If the system is built like this deliberately, why do you think why do you think they have a reason to crash it? They're not trying to crash it. They're trying to crash it for you. They're not trying to crash the system. They're trying to crash it for you. It's called pocket inflation. You destroy the bottom of the pyramid basically, and you try to replace the foundation with a genius population from somewhere else, kind of thing. It's sort of like, you built this big beautiful house on the sand, but now you need a foundation for it. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We better find some way to, like, yeah, that's what they're attempting to do, and so they're trying to get rid of you. You're the sand. You're the carbon they're trying to reduce. What is a sustainable amount of tenants if you were to limit it? I wouldn't limit anything. I mean, I think that you have to let the market do that. The market has to do that, and the way you have the market do that is with a hard currency, and that'll actually water finds its own level very quickly. When water stops sloshing around in the jug, it eventually goes flat. And when you stop sloshing the currency value around and the lending around, when you stop sloshing all that around, it'll find its level very quickly. And the reality is most rent seekers right now would go broke. The vast majority would go super broke, super duper hyper broke. They'd be dropping the keys off saying, dude, I can't do any of this. And that would be okay, because then it brings real estate prices down, which isn't a bad thing. Then you have more people that are able to purchase houses and be owners and so on. And on top of that, if you get rid of property taxes, then people start to actually be able to build wealth, right? You cut out the parasite class very quickly. Parasites are your bankers, billionaires, brokers, boomers, politicians, and so on. You cut all those people out, all the middleman economy. Something like between 50 and 70% of GDP is middleman nonsense economy. Cut all that out, and the average person gets rich very quickly, especially the working class, because it's in the name, the working class. They are, in fact, the people that are doing all the work. Yes, I don't like vulnerability. My tenants go broke. Yeah, I know. It can be a problem. Yeah, I mean that's the problem. That is the issue, by the way, and that's the warning I give to the modern landlords that are going head over heels into debt, super duper debt. Like these stories, these guys buying $500,000 houses, renting them out, and they're in a negative cash flow position. I'm a businessman, dude. The math don't math. I mean, I know we say that all the time, and it's becoming an overused phrase, but dude, it's the truth. If you are taking on $500,000 worth of liability to go into a negative cash flow position, which a lot of these guys are doing, they won't admit that, but dude, a lot of them are going to a negative cash flow situation. When you do something like that, and then just keep borrowing the equity and then ratcheting that up, and you're in negative cash, I mean, eventually those numbers are going to catch up with you. That's just reality. They're eventually going to catch up. Where did you learn this? Where you learn all this? Smart trucker. This is just years and years and years of experience. That's all this is. This is just decades and decades of experience. Like I said, I've had an interesting life. Boring, but interesting. Good evening to you too. 100 great points on inflation. Thank you. I'm trying. Inflation is one of the It is one of the reasons that Rome collapsed. Is inflation. And when inflation began to run wild, and in fact, it was a problem. I mean, like, if you guys want to have that discussion, I don't usually go into it, but I mean, like, this is, even Christ talked about this, right? I mean, and regardless of me being an atheist, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, Christ addressed this directly. He addressed Christ doesn't get the credit he deserves as an economist and as a physicist. Like, people look at him as a spiritual leader, but you need to understand that he was also an economist, and he understood money, and he understood money very well. He understood the physics behind it, and he understood that what the Roman Empire was doing was diluting the coins, and because they put the little ridges on the edges of the coin, so they started changing the metallurgy, right? And they started inflating the money supply. And what that did was, then they started working with the church, or whatever it is, the religious leaders of the day, to rip everybody off and give them these fake coins for their gold coins. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So it's really terrible. It creates problems the like of which we're seeing right now, where there's a complete distortion in everything. Nobody knows what anything's worth. It's just a big mess. So squatters, etc. Yeah. At the same time, there are renters who don't want to be homeowners. Yeah, you're right about that. And the bank will deny them. Yeah, the bank denies people because rent seekers will go in there and say, "Hey, I'll be a liaison," right? I mean, I'm serious. Imagine this for just a second here. Do you really think that if everybody out there, every landlord out there, no longer, if they just said, "That's it, I'm not going to buy any more rental properties for debt anymore, ever again. I'm done. I've officially caught my limit. I'm no longer doing it," right? If every single landlord did that and said, "We're no longer borrowing money from the banks," what are the banks going to do? Banks make money one way, getting you in debt, which means that if nobody's willing to borrow, they have to lower their standards. Right? Just like all those 22-year-old girls that want to marry some guy who's 6'5", and blue eyes and works in finance, right? That guy, right? He's got abs, right? And all that, it drives a Bugatti, all that nonsense, right? All those 22-year-old girls, where men have been saying, "Dude, if you want to be, you're 22 and single. Do you want to be 42 and single?" Well, no. Well, then you need to make a change because, your standards are too high. You're ridiculous with this. You need to lower your standards. So the same thing happens to bankers. They have to bring their standards back down to reality and say, "Okay, we, I guess, have to do these loans." Yes, you do. If you want to stay in business and you still want to make a bunch of fake loans of a bunch of fake dollars, then you have to lower your standards and do other loans, which means you increase the amount of down payment required. And there you go. And you start getting more strict about, like, you start appraising houses instead of having a third-party appraiser. Okay, I mean, I don't want to go into like hardcore banking on this, but as an underwriter, if I'm underwriting a deal, like, I'm the last guy you want to, because if I'm underwriting a deal, I want to make sure that that's a real deal. That there's a real deal in there on the other end of that paper. On the other end of that contract, someone's actually going to fulfill their contract. I want to know that. And I want to know that they have incentive to do so. that they have proper incentive, not from me, but for themselves. I want to make sure that they themselves feel incentivized to fulfill their end of the contract. If I don't get that feel, if I don't get that vibe, dude, I'm not agreeing to that. I'm not green lighting that deal, period. So from a banking perspective, that's exactly what happens. In other words, banking becomes conservative again. What right now, all they have to do is just say, oh, well, there's some retard who's willing to indemnify us. Whatever, go ahead and green light it. Some idiot comes to us and says, oh, I want to buy a duplex for $650,000. True story, by the way. True story, $650,000 for a duplex that each side rented out for $1,500 a month. Total cash flow, $3,000 a month. Not including any vacancy. Including no vacancy on that. $650,000, that is a negative cash flow situation of something like $2,800 a month. Per month, negative. Yeah, some underwriter greenlit that deal. No joke. So, yeah, I mean, like that's just completely irresponsible. Well, they had good credit. Yeah, they had good credit. Doesn't mean you should have done the deal. Yeah, I'm hardcore on this stuff. Like I said, I mean, I'm the last guy that you want to have in charge of that kind of stuff, because I'm going to look at the numbers and go, dude, you're out of your mind. I'm not like all these crazy CEOs. Oh, let's find some way around this. No. Let's be honest about things. Let's find out what something's actually worth. Let's find the real deal on this, rather than just once upon a time in fairy tale land where Mar-a-Lago is worth $5 billion. Come on. Put that on eBay, 99 cents no reserve, and cash only, and watch what happens as you find out that that's worth basically about, you might get 25 million bucks cash, maybe for the whole thing. I pay more in rent than I would have more. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the problem. So, like, from a banking perspective, right? If I'm underwriting a deal and I know that you're paying, $1,800 a month in rent, let's say, I'm just picking an arbitrary number, and you come to me and say, I want to buy a house, and my payment would be, your payment's going to be something like $1,150. Okay, well, you're already paying $1,800. All right, show me that you can save up some kind of a down payment, and let's do this deal. That's what ends up happening. Right, so I mean, like this, unfortunately, the rent seekers, all they do, landlords add no value to the economy. They do not. Just by definition, they don't. Sorry, you don't add any value to the economy. What you add value to is to bankers, because you agree to indemnify them from paper losses. That's the reality. There is no way around that. That is absolute 100% hardcore reality. That is all they do, is add indemnification for the banking class. By the way, I'm not judging any of this. Just be advised. I'm not making any judgments here on this. I'm just telling you that's how it is. Don't think of it as something that it's not. Don't dilute yourself into saying that you're doing some kind of public benefit for people, because you're really not. You're charging them more money for rent than what they would have as a payment on that house if the bank were forced to do those loans. And I don't mean forced to do them with any kind of government action, because I'm not about that, but just by saying, hey, listen, I mean, we're not going to do that. We don't want to have a country of renters. We need to have a nation of people who actually own, because then they tend to care. This is why I have no respect for conservatives. I have conservatives court me all the time, who want me to join the Klan. And I'm like, no, I'm not joining your Klan. And the reason why is because I have no respect for you. And here's why. You make the statement of people when they're 19, if you're not a liberal by the time you're 19, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by the time you're 29, you have no brain. And why do you have to be? Does it change people's voting habits if you're a homeowner versus not homeowner? Right? The conservatives all say, yes, it changes your voting habits, and people tend to become slightly more conservative, fiscally, if nothing else. Fiscally. I'm not talking about all of your weird kinks. I'm talking about fiscally. Okay? Most people, when they own property, become a bit more fiscally conservative and more grounded, down to earth and based, for lack of a better word. That's exactly what happens to people. So, if you are forcing people to not do that, why do you think, why do you then complain about it? In other words, you're going to create the circumstances and then you're going to bitch about it. I can't have any respect for that. Sorry. I don't have it, and that's the truth, and it's unfortunately the truth that it's the unfortunate truth that your conservative leaders should have told you a long time ago, but they won't, because they make money off of it too. So, I mean, so how can I have any respect for that? You want people owning property. So therefore, if you want that to happen and you want people to actually change their voting habits to be more conservative, then you need to foster those conditions. You need to kind of push those kinds of conditions and say, no, we don't want to have people just constantly renting. We want people to own. Like, well, but they need to have better jobs. This is the other thing. There is no such thing as a better job. No such thing. Because, like, well, but people can go be doctors. Have you been to a doctor's office recently? Because I have. I'm not impressed. Just giving people medical degrees is not a solution. That's not a solution, dude. Just giving people nursing degrees is not a solution. No such thing. You know, I mean, like, that's not how any of this works in the real world. In practice, in theory, in college or something like that, I mean, this kind of stuff works on paper. It doesn't work in real life. You get into real life and, like, none of this stuff actually functions the way you think it does. So, yeah, I mean, if you want people to be like that, then you have to foster that. And if you're not going to foster it, and you're just create a bunch of renters and say, well, they need to have better jobs. And I've been over this and over this. The better job thing is a lie, because if everybody goes to college to become an engineer, what happens to engineering? How does supply and demand work? It's really simple. It's really simple. This is basic economics. I don't even teach economics from this perspective. But I mean, if I wanted to teach basic economics, here's how it would work. If your supply exceeds your demand, what happens? Your prices go down. That means your wages go down. So if you flood the country with a bunch of doctors, a bunch of cheap doctors because you gave them all medical degrees, what happens? In a normal economy. I'm not talking about when you just print a bunch of money and just keep raising the rates on everything and just keep charging more money for MRI machines. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, what would actually happen? Your prices go down. The bottom falls out of the wages. If doctors actually had to charge people cash and there was no insurance of any kind, what would doctors actually have to charge to get people to come into their doctor's office? It probably would go down to about $130 an hour. Pretty much about what a mechanic makes. True story. That's about what things would level off, because based on the demand. But there's a huge need for doctors. There's a cap. Every market has a cap. At a certain point, you max out, and then you come back down. Right? This is basic stuff. You max out on any market. At a certain point, there's only so many. Think about it. There's only so much need for McDonald's. At a certain point, they start closing stores down because there's just not as much need for another McDonald's. That's why you're seeing restaurant closures. That's why you're seeing even big stores and box stores and stuff. That's why you're seeing all the stuff closed, because there's only so much need for it in a declining economy. Declining economy is just declining people. More deaths than there are births. It's just, I mean, like that part's just math. What effect will fires have on the markets? We'll see what happens. Probably not as big as you would think, because the markets right now are so distorted that it's probably not going to be as big of it's probably not going to be as big a problem as you might think, given how distorted the markets already are. And if the markets do even go down, if the market, like for example, let's say that the Dow and the S&P Monday morning started dropping like 10-15%, which would be like unbelievable, right? Like, I mean, that would be world news if that happened. That would be considered like Black Monday level collapse. They would fire up the printing presses, and a whole bunch of opaque investors in hedge funds from overseas would start plowing all kinds of dollars from dubious sources, at best, into the markets to prop it all back up. That's the unfortunate reality. That's what happens when you distort an economy this bad. Let's see here. Would you buy into a market when there's blood in the streets? Depends on the market. But as far as if you're talking about like property, for example, if blood in the streets, buy property, which is how the saying goes. Yeah, sure. But I mean, again, for me, it's like I only buy what I'm going to use and what I think is actually going to be profitable to me. You understand? Like, so if let's say I wanted to open a machine shop for example, let's say I wanted to do that. I thought, oh, hey, there's a need for a machine shop, and there's nobody who can do a lot of custom work and everything. And I've got 4 or 5 CNC machines, and I want to open my machine shop. So I need to have, let's say, 2 acres of land to put a big building on and have parking for customers and so forth, right? That's what I'm going to go after. Now, I might buy a little bit extra or something just to make sure that I have room for, extra parking if I'm going to expand, possibly. But I'm not going to try and like corner the market. That's just not my way, right? Because again, you want to have other people kind of buying into that, because again, especially if you actually care about having the long-term health of your country. No different than the long-term health of your business, right? Right now, you have a bunch of corporations that have sacrificed the long-term health of their company for paying out dividends right now, because everybody's been convinced that the shareholders are required to have a return. That is not a thing. It's never been a thing on anything that I've ever signed for any brokerage agreement that I've ever had. But does that make sense? So I mean, that's just kind of it. Like you could say like, well, but you should buy more. Like, yeah, again, maybe, but there's other people out there that kind of need to be brought up along if you want to have, I don't really like a lot of people, but that doesn't mean that I want them to be deliberately destroyed. And it doesn't mean that I don't want them to be able to actually be able to play the game as well. Okay, it's more fun when you can have more players play the game. It's not as much fun when there's just a handful of people that are ripping each other off. They're not suppressors actually behind me. Those are my oil. Those are oil and fuel filters. The big ones are oil filter. The little one, that's a water separator, and the other one is a fuel filter. What precious metal still? Again, like gold, silver. I still like those things. Where is your state? Texas. It's in the south of the U.S. Let's see here. I'm that guy, but my height disqualified. Yeah, I know. That's just it. It's like that is weird. That's how it works. The 6'5" thing. Like if I were 6'5", I would be like this. This would be me at 6'5". So if it depends on what shoes I'm in, but I do notice though, it is true. I do notice this, that I do get more attention if I wear like my boots, because my boots are I'm actually like 2.5 inches taller, so it's weird. You think, guys, have enough Luigi's left? No, probably not. Not to mention Luigi was far right. I don't know if you want to call them far right. I don't know. Anymore nowadays, those things are a lot of those statements are becoming meaningless. I still use them colloquially because so many people still use them, but yeah, I mean, it really needs to be the spectrum needs to be kind of looked at a little differently. Where do you fall on the spectrum? If you wanted to look at it this way, if you go look at the old John Birch Society video, they think of it like a wedge. Okay, so on this side you have 100% total government, and on this side you have 0% government. I'm way over here in the 0.1% government, just enough government in there to hold together a republic, and that's about it. Everything else should be left alone. The ideas of using government force or corporate force or any of these other ideas to try and these gimmicks are just really terrible to me. So no, I don't fit into the category of any of the ism people. You could say that I'm a constitutional moderate, I suppose. You could call me that, if you were looking for some kind of label to hang on me. Where do you? Let's see here. Let's see here. Computer science degrees should show everyone what happens when you have too much. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the example I use actually was I used the old example of ITT Technical Institute in Seattle, because I grew up in Seattle, and there was a business called ITT Tech, and what their whole thing was, hey, come to ITT Tech and you can finance this education, and when you get out, you're going to make all this money. Well, back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was all about AutoCAD. For those of you who are too young to know what AutoCAD is like computer-aided drafting, and there used to be there was this demand, right? And it was a fake demand. There wasn't really a huge demand for it. There was a demand, but there wasn't a demand the way that we would think of it. Kind of like truck drivers. There is no shortage of truck drivers in the U.S. There has not been a shortage of truck drivers. what they do is they keep saying, oh my God, there's a shortage, go to these schools, pay $10,000, learn to drive a truck, and go into debt, and then get out there, and then now you have a CDL. Now you're one of the unwashed masses of CDL holders. That's exactly what happened with AutoCAD drafters in the late 80s, early 90s. So the ITT tech, and this, by the way, this is not slander because this actually happened. It's not slander if it's true. They brought in like piles and piles of students into these schools, telling people when you get out, the top earners are making $40 an hour. Dude, in 1990, $40 an hour, you have no idea how much money that was in 1990 to make $40 per hour. Dude, if you made that kind of money and you were like, let's say you were 25 or 26 and you made $40 an hour in 1990, that was a ton of money. That was a ton of money. I mean, you could actually afford to, like, not only could you afford to buy a house by yourself, but you could afford to actually live a pretty comfortable life. So everybody floods into this. They get their CAD degree, and then they get out into the marketplace, and the marketplace didn't have anywhere near enough jobs for any of that. So then it became basically like an $8.25 an hour job. No joke, that's exactly what happened. I know guys that happened to. Website design, all that kind of stuff. I know guys that did that, who flooded in. They had $25,000 with student loans. Again, this is back in the 90s. And they get out, and then by the time they get out, the degree that they had was already worthless. And it just happens. That's what ends up happening. When you flood the markets with too many people, you need to let the markets figure itself out. And that's why you have to watch out for the propaganda. When they start pushing, oh my God, there's a shortage of XYZ, fill in the blank, whatever it is. There's a shortage of whatever. You have to be smarter than that and go, okay, hold on. If everybody's going to zig, that means you zag. That's right. I'm not telling you to roll a blunt. I'm telling you, if everybody zigs, you zag, right? So, although you can roll a blunt if you want to. I was here. He was here a while ago. He was 100 behind. So, I mean, I may have skipped over somebody. I was trying to, let's see here. This is not my last live. I don't think. I'd have to look at the calendar. I may have one more before TikTok goes the way of, the spruce goose. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. Well, I appreciate you being here. You're certainly welcome. Oh my God, did it again. XRP is a good investment. Do I think XRP? I don't know enough about XRP. I will say this: if it's crypto and it has a CEO, that's a problem. If it's crypto and it's an open-ended amount of currency that can be created, it's a problem. That's that is my honest opinion, and that I would say that about absolutely any crypto. Absolutely any crypto. If it has a CEO. Or it has like a group of guys that are controlling it somehow. Then for me personally, I'm interested. I like the idea of of being able to be anonymous. Is California going to affect the whole USA price? Oh, probably. Insurance. Okay, so here's how insurance works, and I've covered this a few times. But insurance, here's what's going to end up happening. They're going to socialize all those losses to. Fine, uncomfortable. Oh, you got to be kidding me. Visibility of course it's restricted. Okay, so whatever. TikTok. So anyway, so now my visibilities are now restricted and so on. Anyway, this where was I? Insurance. What they're going to end up doing with that, more than likely, is they're going to socialize the losses, and but they can only raise rates to a certain point before people can no longer pay them. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, you max out, and the incomes just don't support the premiums. So then they'll start denying more claims. They'll look for more and more and more ways to deny claims. They're going to look for more and more ways to pump up your deductibles. That's what's going to end up happening. No, people will, the rest of the world, the rest of the country will be actually paying for all of the incompetence in California. Absolutely. They absolutely will be paying for that. We need to ban corporations owning land. Yeah, I mean, that would be one possible way of doing it, of just simply saying, listen, if you want to own land in the U.S., you have to be an American, and you have to be, it has to be a person. And then what you do is you just then take away the fear and say, your land can never be taken away from you for any reason whatsoever. It can never be taken away from you. If you buy it or you own it and it's in your name, it can never be taken away from you under any circumstances, including, you know, criminal prosecution, etc. You know, it may get willed onto your heirs or to whomever you name, but that would be how you would go about that. Something to that effect might be how you would go about it. That way you couldn't lose your land. Let's see, ITT Tech worked for me. Yeah, 15 years career. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, for some people it did, and it's like, understand. I mean, I'm talking about the overall. It's like me. It's, again, on average, men are taller than women, and then invariably someone will type with their thumbs. They'll furiously type. I know a woman who's 6'3". Like, dude, I'm saying on average, okay? So I'm not picking on you. I'm just like, dude, that's just $40 an hour. It's way more people. That's what I mean. Yeah, just what I'm saying. Back in 1990, imagine $40 an hour in 1990, when it really, that kind of meant something. From more the blue collar perspective. I wouldn't even consider that white collar, because in the 70s is when $100,000 a year of income, that truly meant something. In the 1970s, if you can imagine, let's say the middle 70s, if you made $100K a year in the 70s, that really meant something. You had a lot of money. You were doing extremely well, and that is not the case anymore. Now, I mean, $100,000 is basically minimum wage at this point. We need to ban property tax on home. Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. You know, if you want to tax the corporations, go ahead and tax the corporations. The argument that gets made, unfortunately, it's a false argument that gets made. The argument is similar to the trickle-down idea, which is, oh, well, if we lower all of these costs for the corporations, they'll hire more people. That's not what happens. That's not how that works in the real world. That's not how it actually how it plays out. That may be how some companies operate, but that's not how majority of companies operate. They don't operate like that anymore. Now they do the Jack Welch thing, which is, oh, great, we have more money. Cool, we can move out of the country and sell it cheaper. I mean, like, that's what they do. And so, yeah, that's what ends up happening. I was making $7.20 an hour in 19. Come on, having $7.20 an hour in 1990. I had a degree. Yeah, that's what I mean. It wasn't big money, but it was certainly better money in 1990. No foreign. Yeah, that's just a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. I don't know why anybody, you know, I don't know why anybody thinks that that's a good idea. I've never understood that. Shortage of tool and die in my time ever. Yeah, that's it. You know, there was a shortage, I suppose, and then but the solution wasn't just offshore everything. The solution should have been, you know, just again, rates come up, and then the small business owners are the ones who are able to clean up on that, and they start hiring more apprentices, and so like that's just all it takes. And you know, tariffs actually do a good job of that. So, but you can only have your tariffs in lieu of. Instead of income taxes, not in addition to. So, all right. What time is it anyway? I don't even know what time it is. Probably super late. I've probably been doing this for 2 hours by now, or close to it. Do you believe there will ever be a healthcare system without pharmaceutical and insurance control? Yeah, after a collapse, maybe. But it's going to take a pillage. You know, it's going to take a bottoming out before that kind of thing happens. And once again, it'll take people going back to wanting to be paid, wanting to deal in hard money, and then of course hard money begets hard work begets hard science. I mean, that's just how all of this stuff plays out. When your currency dies, it takes everything with it. It takes ambition with it. It takes drive. It takes motive. It takes everything just right out of everybody, because like it sort of becomes why bother, and that's what ends up happening. It's one of the reasons why I think biologically, in my opinion, that one of the reasons why like testosterone is dropping in men. I do think that it is an environmental thing, and I don't think it has necessarily to do all with the plastics. That's probably something to it, but I mean, I don't think it has to do with it. I think there's also a psychological aspect of kind of why bother? Like, dude, sucks, and I'm just going to play video games and just kind of tune out of life. Yeah, and I think that actually ends up happening. Pharmaceuticals are a scam. I don't know that all pharmaceuticals are a scam, but I mean, they certainly aren't what they used to be. Now it's hard to trust anybody who's making pharmaceuticals and who's prescribing them. So that makes sense. Like, it's difficult to trust them as a result of that. I own a restaurant and cleaning company. You have any tips for me? Not especially. I closed my restaurant because I couldn't maintain the quality of the food. And not because I couldn't do it, but because the costs, I would have had to charge so much money to my customers, and nobody would have paid it. So, I'm like, well, if I can't maintain the same kind of quality, I mean, like, there's kind of no point in doing this. So after many years of working and stuff, we just kind of closed down. But and for cleaning, hope that they make everybody go back to the office. If you're talking about like a commercial cleaning, right? Or if you're talking about like at home cleaning, there's really, just run it. I would say run it as lean as possible. I would tell that to anybody, any business. I would say run it as lean as possible, and don't skimp on your wages. If you are hiring somebody, try to move them up as quickly. How I did it was I tried to, if I found somebody who was really good, I think of one employee actually off the top of my head that we had, and I moved her up as quickly as I could, pay-wise, because I wanted to make sure that we kept her interested, and I wanted to make sure that she was going to show up and do the job. And since she did show up and do the job, I moved her up as quickly as I could and tried to make sure that she had some money coming in. And we gave her a very nice severance package and so forth too when we closed. But I did that. That's how I did it. So I can't speak for anybody else. That's just how I did it. As far as because you have to balance the long-term health of your company, assuming you're playing the long game, versus your profitability. And there is a delicate balancing act there, and it's a balancing act that just hasn't been. Nobody cares anymore. As far at the executive level, at the corporate level, none of those guys care. It's all profit now, and it's to the exclusion of everything else. Sad, but true. And it just means that people are going to have to become criminal on their own. You're just going to figure it out, and learn. Start thinking like a criminal. Be a smart criminal. No full-length chinchilla coats. No ringside nonsense, at some fixed fight with Logan Paul and that other, and Mike Tyson. None of that nonsense, man. If you're going to be a criminal, be a smart criminal, and keep everything hidden to the best of your ability. Apathy as a response to the current. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly. It's all Florida water. It's something, but but I think that a lot of it actually has to do with really just personally. I think a lot of it has to do with just when your currency fades, everything else just goes with it. Division of labor, desire, everything, because it no longer means that the game is fair. It no longer means that the guy who does all the work is going to be successful. It means the guy that's closest to the printing press is going to be successful. That's it. It no longer makes any difference how smart you are, how clever you are, how talented. None of that means anything anymore. All it means, all you have to do to be able to be super successful is just be closer to the printing press than somebody else. That's it. Well, in other words, be born into the right family. Like you're right back to the whole idea of just sort of the monarchy and so on. So, ever looked into regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy? I haven't. I'm sure it's a promising industry, but I haven't looked into it. What was your analogy you gave a while back to find out if a kid was intelligent? That's called the marshmallow test. And if it's done, in my opinion, it's done wrong the way that the psychometricians and the psychologists do it. The psychiatrists, psychologists, the people that are into that field, the Jordan Petersons of the world. I'm not picking on Jordan Peterson. I'm just saying, that's the field, and they do a test called the marshmallow test, or the donut test, or cookie test, or whatever. It's a treat that a kid likes, and the trick goes like this, because it is kind of a trick. You you offer a kid, this is how they do it. You offer a kid a donut or a treat, and then tell them, and then say, well, wait, hold on a second here. If you can wait 10 minutes, I'll give you 2 of them. And then you show them the second cookie or second donut or something. And then, then you get the kid to wait. And then the theory is if that kid can wait 10 minutes, it shows that they can delay gratification, which is a sign of intelligence or higher IQ. That's the theory. The problem is, and I poked a hole right in that, in that theory by pointing out that that's actually not what you got. You didn't get a sign of intelligence. You got a sign of obedience and trust. That's what you got. The kid trusts that you're going to make good on that second donut or second cookie or whatever it is. So here's how you would actually do that test, and the correct way to do it, in my view. You'll never get it past an ethics board, but this is how you would do it. You would do the exact same experiment. You offer the 2, tell them to wait 10 minutes, and then after the 10 minutes up and the kid goes, okay, give me my donuts, my cookie, you eat both of those donuts and cookies or whatever it is, and then just walk off and tell the kid to get bent and say, I lied to you. Right? That's how you would do that test. But it's not over yet. Then you would go back a week later or so, make sure to do the exact same experiment. So make sure to control for absolutely everything. That means wear the exact same clothes that you were wearing when you did it the first time. Make sure they were wearing the exact same clothes. Make sure everything about it is deja vu, to where it's the exact same experiment. And so you control for all of that. And then do that exact same. Hey, you want a donut? Yes. Do you want 2 donuts? Wait 10 minutes. Now we see if the kid's intelligent. Because now the kid's going to, if they're smart, they go, nah, I'll just take the first donut. Thank you very much. You just take your promise of the future, and just shove that right back where it came from. That's how you would do that test. And that would show intelligence, because that would show that the kid understands the environment in which he's in right now. The trust aspect, because people take trust out of it. And right now, we don't live in a world of trustworthy people. That's the truth. That includes your parents, your grandparents, that includes everybody around you, me, everybody. That includes everybody, right? We don't live in a trustworthy environment. So that's how you would do that test. And that's how you would test. In my opinion, that's how you would go about that test. You would offer it and then eat it yourself, then go back, try it again, and see if the kid says, no, I'm not falling for that a second time. That's a sign of intelligence. The rest of it, about the whole delayed gratification, which is a function of trust, that's just how much the kid trusts the adults. Right? So if you have adult parents or parents that are loving and caring and nurturing people who have never given the child any reason to distrust them, then that kid's it's gonna be easier for them to wait 10 minutes on something, as opposed to people that come from a family that is full of distrust. So you end up having control for the parents and possibly even the grandparents. So just doing that marshmallow test with a kid in an isolated environment like that doesn't really work. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not psychometrically valid. That isn't a valid test as far as I'm concerned. Now, again, I know there's going to be a whole bunch of psychologists out there that if they saw this, and no psychologists follow me, but if any psychologists did follow me and they saw this, they would have a complete freak out and start screaming at me about white papers this and studies that at Stanford University and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, dude, no, real world versus academia. 2 completely different things. And so that was the analogy. Let's see here. Is capitalism still feasible at this point? If not, what do you believe would be the most ideal system? Well, capitalism, again, all the isms are just systems of control. They're just systems of management. You don't really need to have a system of management if you have an honest currency. If you have honest weights and measures, then you don't really need to have a system of management. You can have self-rule. Self-rule is what the U.S. was founded upon. It is. It's a hard concept to understand because it's not taught. Nobody teaches it, to my knowledge. None of the teachers teach it. Any teacher out there that would hear any of the stuff that this whole whatever it is 2 hours I've been talking, if you were to show this entire thing and they were to actually be able to put their phone down long enough to pay attention and watch this video for the entire length and hear all this stuff, most teachers would go, oh my God, I would kick this kid out of my class so fast. Yeah, of course they would. And that's why I got kicked out of everything. Because, like, dude, yeah, I mean, I'm telling you objective reality, and you know it is. That's the thing. But schools teach you unreality. School's job is to get you to quit asking questions, not educate you. That's not what it is. It's to get you to stop asking questions and just accept what you're being told at face value, and just that's the end of it. The emperor is in fact wearing these beautiful garments that nobody else can see. That's what you're supposed to believe. You're not supposed to be the little kid who says, "Dude, yeah, naked. What the hell?" So, I would voice in the first tone. Yeah, no kidding, huh? So anyway, you're very welcome. You're very welcome to Eastbound and Down 91. Guys, my fingers are cold. I'm going in. It's like super cold out here. It's not 1,000,000 degrees, but I'm all done for the night. Thank you so very much and everything. And I think next Saturday would possibly be the last, at least on TikTok and stuff. And you'll have to go find me on the other platforms if you so choose. So have a great night. Have a great weekend. And, and you're very welcome. I try to answer your questions if I could and stuff, and we'll catch you guys later on.